For everyone who is on the computer now, we ask that you please mute yourself. Thank you, Mr. Blackburn.
Alexa, turn the radio off.
Caitlin Powell, could you please mute your computer? Okay. Hey, good, you did it. See if there's anybody else. How many do we have now, Michelle? Hang on, I'm just muting everybody who hasn't muted themselves. Barry's iPad, could you please mute yourself? John Cop, never mind, I can do that. Barry's iPad, could you please mute yourself? I seem to have quite a few. Bonnie, could you please mute yourself?
So you're on mute.
Bill's iPad, we're gonna go ahead and mute you.
How do I? You
Scott.
Yeah, that's on.
I'm not here, Dick.
Wow, the speaker's working well. I don't think I have to yell.
Are we about ready to begin?
I'm just muting some people real quick. Just give me a moment. I'm just trying to get everybody, because I still have people talking, so.
It should be me.
Joyce Ryder, we're gonna be muting you. Bill Yard, we're gonna be muting you. Mr. Keiser, thank you. Steve Fidel, we're gonna be muting you. Give it just a minute, Scott, so I can make sure everybody's muted.
Okay.
James LaFleur, please mute yourself. Deborah's iPad, please mute yourself. Sarah Conrad. Linda Reuter, please mute yourself. You have 101 so far. Wow, wonderful. Give it just a second, I'll make an announcement, Scott, and then you can go ahead. If you're just getting on the computer, ladies and gentlemen, if you could please mute yourselves, I would really appreciate it. There you go. Okay. Scott, I think you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Welcome to this month's town hall meeting for Barefoot Beach Club. Who's ever radio's running, could they please mute themselves? Thank you. We always start these meetings out with a brief update of the status of the rebuild project and stuff related to that. Today will be a little longer than normal because we have more things to report. But to start off at the beginning, we only have one building without occupancy. It's number 2/255. They are waiting on their fire alarm. In the last week, they've accomplished some important tasks that took longer than we anticipated. And they are down to, they believe everything's wired up. They believe all the error messages, but one was gone as of yesterday. I don't know if it's gone by last night. And then they're going to close the building up, hook up the radio transmitter, and hopefully be getting a permit request, inspection request next week. So there's a possibility 265 might be ready for occupancy late next week. 55. Maybe not, but close. For rebuilding, the projects are going, as it always does. When people show up, we get a lot done, and when less show up, less gets done. Most of the concrete work, what we call concrete blocks, have been done. We have stucco work kind of completed in Club 1. That's buildings 253, 255, and 257. The stucco crew, last I heard, is working on 262. Basically, the partitioning, fencing inside your storage units, those people are becoming available earlier, so that task will be done a little sooner than we thought. We still think we'll get done before season starts, but again, it's dependent on people showing up, but we're making good progress. And the rebuild's coming along. The next rebuild is for the clubhouse. That's also making progress. We've completed the door installation, the door installation, the insulation, the fire sprinkler stuff, metal framing, wallboard, stucco, and electrical rough-in. We have work in progress for more electrical, for the fire alarm, for the finish the wallboard. The street paper work is coming along well on that, but it's not done yet. And we are beginning the process to get the elevator work done, and that's going to be probably our last task we get completed. But that's still, with the exception of the elevator, we think all that will be done well before season. I hate to say that out loud. The elevator should be done before season, but you never know. The 259 pool, the current holdup is waiting for drawings. That's from an individual named Gina who sent us an email a couple days ago that said she is 75% done, and it's her anticipation that we'll have drawings by the end of next week. Hasn't been super accurate with their estimates in the past, but we're hopeful. And then the 263 pool, we're waiting for a permit. The first permit to demo the pool was rejected, so it's been resubmitted. That's the status of rebuild on that. Dick Raby is going to speak to us now about the cleanup between the parking lots and the beach. He's been working on that project, and that'll be followed by Michelle, who's speaking about cleaning the other direction. Dick, are you ready to give a brief presentation?
Yes, I am. Hang on, got to find it. So I've been in touch with two firms that can assist with acquiring permits. I asked that they focus on what we can do now to clean up the dunes rather than wait until after turtle season. One has indicated the possibility of obtaining an emergency permit so we can remove the dead vegetation and the invasive plants that are popping up, plus fill in the washed out areas, some of which are deep enough they hold water. So they're small ponds. I'm just waiting on their formal proposal to get started. Items such as totally replanting or installation of boardwalks, et cetera, will require permits and probably can't be done until after turtle season.
Dick, may I interject? At the meeting with the master, David Lieberman says they're in process of trying to get a permit now to replant. And then there's a grant that they think they can get to be reimbursed, so you might want to talk to him.
Okay. I don't know, I mean, who's he working with?
That's the name, Dick, that's the name I gave you. It was a contact I gave.
And who never responded to you, and you told me to go on and talk to somebody else, so that's where I'm at. Anyway, to Terry's point, there's a matching grant program for restoration of the beach and there's $150,000 matching amount per parcel. We think we have qualified, we have 4 qualified parcels. One's for clubs 1, 2, 3, and COA. So that firm will help us with that also, trying to determine, when I read it, it covers things like engineering, permit cost, sand, etc. We're hoping it also includes replanting. Along with the replanting, we've also received a letter from the county that they will be planting some portions of the new berm that was installed and have invited us to appoint a rep to be involved in that selection of plants. Scott and I have asked Barbara Blackburn to be the rep for obvious reasons. No date has been given to when this meeting will occur. I'm assuming within the next month or so. Speaking of the berm, it was installed from the county line, which is just south of docks, beach house, all the way past, just to the south of the cottages. It was not installed along the preserve. The top of the berm is about 4 to 5 feet above sea level, and it's about 15 yards plus or minus wide. It has sloping sides down on either side, towards our buildings and towards the Gulf. The installation avoided the sea turtle nest. So in some places, there are big areas that did not get any sand, but there is no place where there is a full break, you might say, in the berm in case we have a high water issue.
I don't know, they didn't do that.
Any questions?
Dick, I have a question. I'm wondering whatever happened to the whole idea that we heard about after the hurricane struck, that the county or somebody responsible in Florida would be replanting for us free of charge to us.
I had just told you what they're gonna do. The
It's a
berm,
matching,
the berm portion,
yes,
the county has invited us to be involved in the selection of the plants,
okay.
which makes it sound like the berm portion is gonna be replanted by the county.
What would
It's
be our
the-
portion?
What does that mean?
Okay, if they're doing the berm, what do we have to
We
replant?
gotta probably, until we apply for permits,
Uh-huh.
we don't know, okay? I mean, literally, that's when they respond and say, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. So we don't know that.
Okay.
So we gotta get requests, permits.
Okay,
But for this front-end work, there's some kind of an emergency permit we can get. Remove the dead stuff, remove the invasives, which are popping up, and fill the voids. That's it. That would be just the emergency piece. So you're asking questions I don't know answers to, okay?
Rod Johnson did mention at the master meeting that there is a ton, literally, of sand south of the cottages that he said is probably available, to be used. So that might be something to check in on.
Well, I'll have to look, but I walk that
Yeah,
every other day, and I haven't seen any pile of sand, okay?
but that's what he reported.
Okay, I'm just telling you. I know maybe it's a little higher or something, but I sure didn't notice
Yeah.
anything.
I agree with you.
He was talking about where the end of the walkway, the sidewalk goes. He says the last part of the sidewalk is under sand, is what I understood in the meeting. I'm not there, so I didn't look, but that's what he said.
Okay,
There's a section of the brick that is still covered in sand.
in the preserve,
It's up to the preserve, I believe.
Right.
Because that's asphalt when you get into the preserve.
yeah.
To the end of the cottages, Dick. Okay,
Okay, I'll take a walk.
thank you very much for that presentation. Michelle, will you speak about the cleanup on the other half?
Sure, so we've hired Landscape Florida, who's gonna come in and do a general cleanup. They're gonna clean the stuff on the sides of the buildings, the front of the buildings, they're gonna clean up all the dead stuff, they're gonna cut all the grass that's there, or the weeds that are there. They're gonna pick up all the debris, the glass that's still there, any kind of trash, all that stuff. They're gonna clean it up and make it look as nice as possible. There's a lot of areas where there's just a lot of debris and a lot of broken or dead foliage. So we want to get that cleaned up. We are under construction, but the least we can do is get this stuff cleaned up to make it look a little bit more presentable as we continue to do all this construction. They're going to be here 4 or 5 guy crews, 2 crews a day. They're going to be here on the 6th, and they're going to be here again on the 13th. And if we need an additional day, they'll provide it at no extra cost.
Can we ask the contractors to clean up after themselves?
Well, yeah, of course. We are.
Well,
working
no,
on
not
that.
of course, there is cans, bottles, you name it.
Right, and we're
And it
working on that.
appears after they've been there.
Yeah.
Okay?
And we are working on that. I've talked to Mike about that. We're gonna be talking to, Matt at Walker, and we're gonna be talking to, Nico, or Nico at Walker and Matt at Bill. I keep getting them confused.
Okay,
But they have to get those things cleaned up. And even their work areas need to be picked up. I just asked Matt this morning to move all the parking stops so that they can clean up right there off the parking lot and make it look nice. So, yeah, we are working on that.
Michelle, around the buildings, you said, and in the front of the buildings, will they be mowing down or chopping down the weeds?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah,
not
they're gonna be-
removing, but at least getting them chopped down so that
Yes.
eventually they
Yeah.
won't be so high.
and
Okay.
trimming up all the dead stuff on the front, the thick trees, because they're removing the trees as they're working on the trees right now. So they're removing those trees that were specified to be removed by Scott Wyndham. So those are being removed now, and then they're gonna be in here starting to clean up after that, so.
they took a bunch of the real tall one, Paul.
Washington.
Is that the Washington?
Yeah.
They took a bunch out of, down by
They're taking them all out.
10, 12,
Yeah.
11.
Yeah, they're gonna be taking
262,
them all
263,
out,
they're
and
gone.
they'll be back to stump grind everything down, so,
They were doing it yesterday.
yeah.
Michelle, is this the same?
Oh, no, not the stump, I'm sorry.
This cleanup crew is the same company that did the trees?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
You should be aware, we've asked both contractors multiple times to ask their people to pick up their trash. So it's not like we haven't asked, it's just, we ask.
now with this cleanup going on, it's gonna be even more
More obvious.
aggressively monitored by Mike. I'm gonna ask cleaning people to help, to notify us when there's trash and things like that. It has been windy, granted, we do have a lot of trash blowing around. However, there is a lot of problems with the contractors just leaving their stuff.
Okay, I think we're ready to start the agenda now then. A couple of these topics should go fairly quick. The first one is, this is a brief notice, letting you know there's gonna be a $2,200 special assessment from the master. We haven't worked on any of the details, who's paying it, when or where. We're just basically letting you know so you can be prepared for it, give you the data as soon as possible. We'll get to the rest of the data quickly, but I just want to prepare everybody for that, and make sure all the boards know that they're gonna have to make sure they come up with $2,200.
Can we make sure they split that between flood and wind?
We
I
can certainly ask them,
suppose
we-
it's all flood.
Yeah, you're right, Terry.
It's pretty much all flood. We have talked about that in the meeting, but it's, it's hard to pick out certain stuff, but yes.
Scott, you have a question from Jan Royal, it says, what does this cover?
Basically, it covers, we have a bunch of outstanding irrigation and landscaping they're doing, like on what's called the distance, the area between the sidewalk and the road, which we call the Devil's Island. It's going to cover stuff like that. They're replacing the broken lights or missing lights for the streets. They're going to do some landscaping around the clubhouse or the guardhouse, those kinds of items. And to answer the next question that's not even been asked, we don't know if it'll go past that. We don't have anything on our list that would imply that it would, but we're also not 100% sure we're done with everything. We don't know till we get there.
Right.
And just to answer your question, that they'll be required to send out a notice 14 days in advance, and they will have to list what it is that they're spending that money on and how they came up with the $2,200. So you'll have that information.
We have a budget that is being ongoing as we find items. But right now, I think that's at $1.3 million,
Yes,
roughly.
might be close to 1.4, but yes,
Yeah, right.
yes.
There, to Terry's point, there's a very detailed spreadsheet being kept. Every item, if they don't have a cost, they estimate the cost, et cetera. So, and it's pretty detailed on what needs to be done, okay, the scope.
And a lot of the items have already been remediated and mitigated. And I think Scott forgot to mention that the guardhouse is another one of our big expenses with the Master Association.
So you have two more questions, one from Barbara Blackburn. Does it include the new lighting on the boulevard?
Yes.
Well,
Well,
just in the homes.
just the homes. That's something that we as a association need to address, because as everybody may or may not know, the master is responsible for all these lights, even down to the preserve. If it's installed, our allocation is about 49%. So we would only be responsible for 49% of it, and the master or the other association. So it behooves us to really do something about that now.
And then the next question is, does the Master Association deal with the sidewalk pavers?
Yes.
Yes.
They are started now they're down to the condos.
Yeah.
So they're moving rapidly.
Tabor Pro.
Paper Pro.
Right, and they were working on the irrigation after that. Anyway, so what's the status of the riprap removal? Terry, is it all gone?
No, they came Monday and a little bit of Tuesday, and then they haven't been here for a couple of days. They have most of the riprap that was Club 2 had hired them to place behind 262. I'd say that's 90% done. Then they'll move on to go to 260. And it's my understanding, and I think Scott Blackburn negotiated his contract, once that is accomplished, then they will take everything else out with the exception of 10 feet in front of all the drains.
Right, that's the deal is we're hoping to get them to execute because that's holding up running irrigation down the Devil's Island right now.
Right.
So that's what we're working through that. Okay, so that's, so basically this is just to let you know that there's going to be a fee coming. We're giving you advance notice as much as possible. We'll get more stuff to you there. The next thing is we are having an increasing number of checks being washed, which means that when you mail in your check to Barefoot, somebody intercepts it, erases the payee name and the dollar amount and gets it changed to themselves. And that's happened at least 4 or 5 times in the last month or two. And there's some things we can do to protect that. Remember when that happens, it's between you and the bank to see who's going to pay for that difference. Barefoot doesn't cover that. You still owe your obligation to Barefoot. And the way to limit that is to, the post office is recommending you don't even mail checks anymore. We got an email to that effect recently. But if you do decide to mail it, they recommend you put it in the mailbox at the post office. Certainly do not put it in your own mailbox with a flag up, because that's an invitation for somebody to come steal it and wash it. The next thing you could do is you could try to make the check harder to alter. Use a dark, either a black or blue gel pen and push hard to make sure it's written fairly thick. Don't use a thin pen to kind of get the color absorbed. But the best solution is to pay electronically. And that's the one that doesn't have the problem with checks being washed or any of that good stuff. So if you really want to make yourself not be at risk for that, switch over to electronic payment. And there's several ways of doing that, but the one that you do through the website works really well. And I'd recommend you consider that. Otherwise, your check washing is going to be a risk. And it's become a really big deal in the last couple of months. It is increasingly getting to be an issue. I have one person I know who no longer accepts checks because of the check washing issue, because their customers didn't want to pay them for the bad checks, and they need to. So we're going to have to realize we're going to have to change our way. If we want to be secure, we need to send less checks and do more things electronically, especially with Barefoot. So that was my one comment about that.
You're not seeing, you know that?
I know, but he can see my hand.
Is there
I just have a quick
comment?
comment. Yeah, I just have a quick comment. Please, if you want to do electronic payment, you can do auto debit through GSI, through our website. If you need assistance setting it up, please call our office. Either Tracy or myself can help you and help you set it up. That information is not, we can't see that information once it's in there. It doesn't provide us with your account numbers or anything like that. And, to our knowledge, it's very, very secure. It's much safer than sending a check. So if you need any help whatsoever signing up with GSI for the auto debit, please feel free to call the office, send us an email. We'll be happy to help you get that set up.
Question.
Sure.
So I got Club 3's invoice or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Set
switching.
Set it up for
I'll
automatic.
switch.
I'm sorry, somebody else is speaking. Please mute your microphone.
I set it up with GSI.
Okay.
I still haven't got anything on the $400 a quarter thing for the
Clubhouse expansion.
or the clubhouse
Okay, so
expansion.
that's fine. Before you leave today, we'll take a look at it and see if you're set up for it, or if.
No, I'm not set up for it.
Okay, but we'll take care of it this afternoon before you leave today,
Okay,
and we'll get that straightened out for you. If you have any problems or
Is that on
any
your list?
questions, please feel free to give us a call. That is what we're here
Just
for,
correct.
to help you. Debbie Green, is there a $295 charge to pay by the ACH?
If you're not on auto pay, yes, there is. If
Yeah.
you do one-time payments, it charges you $2.95.
Right, if you're not on, did you hear Leon?
Auto pay, there's no fee.
Right, auto pay, there is no fee. If you just do a one-time payment, there is a $295 fee,
Unless you're using a credit card,
Unless
which
you're
I would
using
not
which is
recommend.
way
And
more
there's a fee there,
expensive.
too.
Debbie Green, I mailed a check, can I be notified upon receipt? Sure, just give me a call, give us a few days and give me a call or send me an email asking me, or Tracy, and we'll be happy to answer your question.
But let me interrupt here, please. We can't do that for all 348 owners for the COA bills and for the association stuff. We can't do that routinely for everybody. We can do that now for a few people, but that's not gonna be a routine solution. We can't have everybody mail in a check, expect us to call or contact them for every check. We can do it temporarily, but we can't do that forever.
Yeah.
We'll do that as a step over to get into a bill pay system or something. The next one about the special assessment directly, we have to have a meeting and discuss that. We'll let you know. We don't really know at this point how we're gonna do it. I need to talk to the other presidents and we'll put something together. We'll let you know in the next few weeks when we figure that out.
Carol Hess, I set up auto pay, but I also got a bill. Should I ignore the bill and expect auto
I was
pay?
gonna call, she is set up on auto pay, and it's gonna happen, she's all set.
So the way auto pay works, by the way, just so all of you are aware, is that you will get an email notification that your account will be debited on the first of the month. In this case, the first and the second are on a Saturday or Sunday. So you'll likely get an email on Monday, the 3rd, letting you know that your account is gonna be debited within 3 business days. You're not gonna be able to count July 4th because it's a holiday. So within 3 business days from the time you receive that email, your account will be debited that amount, but you will be notified.
that's good.
I don't know why my camera's not working. I'm gonna have to ask.
Well, we need, Carol, thank you. Scott Blackburn is asking how many doors pay the 2,200. That's for the Master Association.
It's 692, but the way that works is the COA will pay, we will be assessed as a COA, and then it's up to the clubs then to collect the money. But we will send one check from here and then we collect from the individuals. But every door past the gatehouse will pay the $2,200.
And then iPad is asking, I'm not sure who this is, did you say something was mailed about check issues? I did not receive. No, we did not mail anything regarding check issues. We did send an email out. And if you need that, you can just give us a call and contact us and we'll resend the email to you.
Are there any other questions about this? Basically, the answer is we probably should start migrating everybody over towards auto bill pay. It'll make it just a lot safer and a lot easier. I think we're going to find as a country, we're going to get that way the next year or two for everything anyway. I think that's where we're going to end up. The next topic is going to be just a brief one. This is the 2-year anniversary of Surfside. For those of you who are paying attention, there's a significant number of articles that have come out in the last couple of weeks about Surfside. And I'm sure it's going to raise some questions here. So I just want to go over what we've learned and how it affects Barefoot. Basically, what we know about Surfside is the pool deck collapsed approximately 7 minutes before the building collapsed. The pool deck was obviously the initiating factor there. And the technical experts believe the problem is because the pool deck failed due to it not withstanding the load that was on it and the increased damage from rain and water in general. They're claiming that the lack of sloping allowed the water to sit there longer and it eroded metal and concrete, and that's why it came down. And we've been working very hard at Barefoot to make sure we handle all water issues very early and promptly, because they are the cause of all of our post-tension cables we have and rebar issues. It's all from water. So we're working very aggressively to not allow water to sit anywhere, because there's no waterproofing that works all the time forever. It always fails. So even though they had waterproofing on the deck at Surfside, as the waterproofing stopped working, it deteriorated. So of course, the solution is always to not allow water to pond anywhere or sit anywhere or be trapped anywhere. We're working aggressively to prevent that. We look at all the problems we have, we try to fix them. One of the things I wanted to bring up today is, as of yesterday or the day before, we had a person come out to scan the floors for rebar, and they found a piece of concrete had fallen from the ceiling above it in the lanai. It's not a big issue, other than the fact that it takes a while to get it fixed. And we would really like to, if you have any concrete cracking or falling, would you please contact the office and let us know so we can look at it and get it scheduled for repair? The association is responsible for all what are called structural issues. Anything carrying a heavy load that's important, we maintain for the safety of the whole building. So it won't even be a cost to you. Just let us know so we can get it queued up and fixed, because it takes months to arrange for somebody to come out and do a small project. We had a small project in building 11, and it took me 5 or 6 months and a fair amount of calls to convince them to come out and show up, because it was only like a $4,000 repair, and nobody wants to show up for a small repair. So if you could tell us, we can maybe group them together and get them fixed, but we want to make sure if you see a piece of concrete cracking or falling, please let the office know. We shouldn't have to wait for somebody to come in to scan it to let us know. So that's the comment about that. But basically, the lesson we learned from Surfside is there's 3. One is water is the root of all evil. Don't allow it to be anywhere. If you have to have it, try to waterproof it. But if you waterproof it, you have to have a maintenance schedule to check in the waterproofing and replace it. Don't overload your floors. And I would normally not bring that up, but I was inspecting a unit in building 3 at their request, and they had a fairly heavy bar on their lanai. And our lanais are not designed to handle that load, and that's not a safe load to do. The lanais are designed to handle basically your standard furniture. As the deck goes closer to the edge, it actually goes from 8 inches to 6 inches, and it's designed for a specific load for a normal room, not for a hot tub, water bed, big bar, any of that stuff. So remember that. And then finally, the most important thing is Surfside came down for one simple reason. They knew they had a problem, but they didn't get it fixed in time. They were literally a couple of weeks short of the engineering repair team getting out there. And the most important lesson from that is we need to make sure when we have a problem, we get it fixed. We don't delay it. We don't argue how we're going to pay for it. Get it fixed. The engineers didn't think the building was going to come down, so nobody felt the pressure to do it. And so if they had repaired it, literally, if they had authorized the person to come out 3 weeks earlier, the guy would have been there a week early, probably wouldn't have come down. Literally, there were 2 weeks for the guy starting the repair and rebuild it all. So the important lesson is when you have a problem, you fix it. It's a concrete building, properly maintained, they'll last essentially forever. Look at the Coliseum. Properly maintained, they'll last forever. If they don't properly maintain them, eventually they're going to come down no matter how well they're built. They're going to come down. So you have to maintain them, and you need to maintain them in a timely manner. So the one lesson out of all this is when you have a problem, we need to fix it. We can't argue about who's going to pay for it or any of that stuff. We need to get the repair scheduled, because even when you schedule it, the vendors won't show up the same month you'd like them to. Sometimes not the same quarter. So that's the last lesson from that one. Are there any important questions? Let's see. What about the weight of all the glass enclosures potentially? Okay, the way that works is, Steve, the way that works is the floors, the load from floor 7 does not pass down to floor 6. Okay, the way the cables are set up is the load on that deck is transferred to the columns next to it. It's a post-tension structure. The way it works is, so the weight of the side glass door building on the 7th floor does not affect the load on the 6th, the 5th, the 4th, or the 3rd. Each one's an independent element, and the only place that load is concentrated is actually in the vertical pillars next to it. And they can withstand that load very nicely. The pillars aren't going to fail from the load. It's more where the flat deck attaches to the pillar or the flat deck itself. So the glass doors in and of themselves aren't really all as critical as you'd think, because that load's transferred to the walls and doesn't accumulate. And it's spread over, a 20 or 30 foot area. When we did our sliding glass doors, we paid for an engineering study because we were the first ones to pull a permit in barefoot. And we went over that very carefully with the engineer to make sure that that would not be a problem. And the county made sure that that was carefully reviewed. But thank you for a good question. I believe that one. We're going to go to a very related issue. We had a storm approximately 2 weeks ago, tomorrow, I believe. And one of the outcomes of that storm was all of the buildings lost power for a while. Some buildings came back sooner than others. I believe 10 of the buildings took 12 hours to come back. Building 10, I believe, took 68 or 70 hours to come back. And that's because the device, the main circuit breaker for the building failed. And we had to order one, get it overnighted from California. It didn't show up when it was supposed to. We had to get it done a second time and installed, and they're up and running. We're good to go. Come Monday, building 4, 260, has a circuit breaker problem. So we rush out and order a new circuit breaker from Wisconsin in this time, get it overnighted. When we put it in, there's water and smoke shooting out of the pipe that feeds the breaker. What that means is there's a short in the wires. This short wasn't there when we rebuilt the transformer, replaced the transformer after the hurricane. But it's the same wires that were there after the hurricane, and they've actually had to have a hole in the insulation, 2 of them, and water in the pipe for this to occur. But basically what happened was there's water in the pipe, and the insulation that's been there, 30 years has 2 nicks in it, one in two different wires. So at least 2 wires have to have nicks in it. And it was actually boiling the water, and the water and soot were coming up the pipe. The reason I'm going into this detail is to give you an idea that there was no way to know there was this problem unless you somehow send something down the conduit to inspect it, which I've never heard of being done, literally 40 years of doing this stuff. The other thing we've noticed is when they opened up the transformer to replace that breaker, the wires that come out of the ground and go into the transformer, the big green box in front of your buildings, was corroded. It's corroded because salt water hit it. When we opened them up to replace and fix the transformers, there's no sign of corrosion back then, but there is now. The way the wires are set up in their age, we can't uncorrode them. We need to pull out the old wires and put new ones in. And this process was done for 5 buildings. So as part of getting the hurricane, getting power back to the buildings in October and November, mostly November, I guess. When we tested each of the wires out, 5 of the buildings had shorts in their wires. We had to pull the wires out, put new ones in. It takes roughly a week. It costs roughly $30,000 for a small building and more for a big one. It has to do more where the transformer is located in relation to the room. So we replaced all the ones that were bad. We didn't see any signs of damage to ones that were good. And by we, I mean FP&L, the electrician, myself, everybody's looking at it, who had a background in electricity, said, yeah, we could go with that. And then we've noticed that we now have corrosion issues, that we can't go with that. The one in building 4 right now, 260, is currently running off a generator and has been for about a week. And they are scheduled to get service next week. They were scheduled originally this week. FP&L declined to honor their scheduled appointments, 2 of them. And now they've deemed to give us new appointments next week, and we hope they honor them. We're doing something slightly different. We've also filed for an inspection with the county that would require them to hit their dates, and then we let FP&L know that we've informed the county that we've got the scheduled, inspection date, and the county would like you to show up. We'll see if that works any better. We have very little influence over FP&L. They are a monopoly that's, the power company. We have essentially no rights except to pay the bill. So we're working on that. But what that means is building 260 / building 4 will be running off the generator for, I would guess, roughly another week, give or take a few days. The generator does not support parking lot lights, hallway lights, elevator, or stairwell lights. It supports the air conditioning, it supports everything in your unit, not just the air conditioners, but we're only supporting the units. And so that's where we're at. The 6 buildings that will have this done with building 260, number 4, excuse me, will be complete. The other 6 buildings probably need to do this also. This will mean your building will be out of power. If FP&L is magic and did what they're supposed to do, only 2 or 3 days. We've not seen that accuracy from them with their estimates, but we need to realize we're going to have to do that. Club 1, it's really not optional. The 2 buildings that don't have it there, they have transformers that need to be replaced, and FP&L will not replace the transformers till the wire is pulled. They don't have spare transformers to replace at this time, so we're not under pressure for that. But when they get the transformer, because they have literally 2 years of transformers ordered for them, we don't want to give them a reason to skip over us and put us in the back of the queue. So we're going to need to get building 1 and building 3 done for sure without really a lot of analysis. It just has to be done. The other 4 buildings need it. It's a function of when they need it, I don't know. At some point, the corrosion will be bad enough to start a fire like we had in building 11's transformer. We don't want that because it took them weeks to get building 11 back up. So we need to understand what we're going to do with that, but the impact's going to be for the owners of the for owners of building 1, which is 253, building 3, which is 257, building 6, which is 263, building 7, which is 262, building 8, which is 265, and building 12, which is 269, will all have to undergo this. I think I got the list right from memory. I know which ones we pulled the wires for when I was there because it's quite an odyssey. The vendor called me today, Beaumont Electric, and asked me to fly down and meet with them on July 17th to go over this and see if we have any options to make this process less painful for everybody. We also want to retest the wires and see if there's anything we can do to clean the wires without replacing them. So I'm going to arrange to go down there and look at it with them. They literally called me this morning and asked me to do that with them. They don't have any desire to spend 6 weeks on this any more than we do. So we're looking to find a good way to do this if we can without it. We're a little doubtful, but we're going to give it a try. But you should be aware that we're working through fixing these corroded wires. And sadly, it's probably not the last thing that's going to be, we're going to find in the next year that's going to fail because of the hurricane we didn't realize ahead of time. Don't know what the next one will be, but something's going to happen. This is all new territory for pretty much everybody. So basically 260 is going to be in generator until next week. Hopefully it'll be done next week. The rest of you working with your boards will have to schedule when you want it done. We also have to work with Beaumont when they can get to it. Beaumont is not accepting any business in 2022 at all from anybody except for special customers for emergency situations. And in 2022 and 2021, I was Beaumont's largest customer, so they've been deemed it nice enough to show up and work for us. They've actually done it in a timely manner. But this is not a small task, and we have to be very cognizant that there is nobody else who will do it. It's a pretty big deal, and it needs 8 to 10 people to show up to literally put the new wire in. It takes 8 to 10 people to feed the wire in. There are 28 wires going from the transformer to the service panel in building 4. 24 or 28. 24 or 28, I forget now, I'd have to look. But and each one weighs, I don't know, 500 pounds probably, 400 pounds. So it's a big deal. But we're working on it. That's where we're going. And are there any questions about that? And then we get to the landscape report.
I just wanted to mention that it sounds like it's highly likely much of this will take place in season, Scott. And our owners just need to be aware that this could be happening. Their building would be on a generator and there would be no elevator and not lights.
I am working with Beaumont and we are having discussions about if we can get it done before October, which is why they want me to fly down and see if there's some way to not do that. They do realize we have a real incentive to get it done before October, and they've generally been good about meeting our needs. But this is a big ask to get 10 people for 60 days or for 30 days. That's 300 person days. That's a big chunk of their inventory of labor. So we're working on it. Literally, I found this stuff out, in the last week, and we've been working through all the issues.
Scott?
Sure, let me answer the question here. Yes, was that Pat, by the way, who was talking?
Yes. You didn't mention building 9 when you listed all these buildings that need their.
Building 9 does not need it done. The ones I did not list already did that in November.
Okay,
so
great.
Building 2, building 4 soon, building 5, 9, 10, and 11 have all had it done.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And the clubhouse will need it done. I inspected the clubhouse and determined that before I left, but it's not a crisis in the clubhouse. We got our generator working there already. So we are planning to do that when we have labor available to do that for the clubhouse. Because that wire runs all the way from building 3 to the clubhouse. It's a fairly long run. So we're hoping to only do it over 2 or 3 days, hopefully over a weekend, but we'll see what we come up with. Will each building go on generator? It's up to each club to decide that, but I believe the answer is right now the intention is everybody's going to do that. But this is not driven by the COA, this is driven by the individual clubs. Are we ready for the landscape report? I believe so. Would Barbara want to take that away?
Hold on.
Should I start?
Give me 1 second. I'm just pulling up your.
Barbara leads our landscape task force, and she's going to be a presentation of what we're going to be presenting to Scott Wyndham as what we think we'd like to change in the plan and modify it and enhance it a little bit. The purpose of this presentation is for all the owners to get a chance to listen to it and make sure we've covered your needs. And here's Barbara.
Hi, well, good morning, everyone, and this will be good news compared to what we just have heard, some of it. The Landscape Task Force Committee has spent a lot of their time this past, let's say, 6 months. We've gone to native nurseries, we've gone to the Naples Botanical Garden, and also we have visited some local communities to look and see. They were actually what Scott Wyndham, a couple of his communities he has designed. Some of us has been hard at work since returning to Barefoot in November, hoping to come up with a new vision for our property. We now have a chance to become stewards of our land and improve upon what is already there, from plant material to irrigation to beautification. Michelle, you can go to the next slide. So this is what will be covered in the presentation, highlights from Scott Wyndham's design proposal, some of the questions we have for Scott Wyndham, because there are always more coming up, our recommendations, and also there'll be a short summary. Thank you. So what I did, just to make sure that people remember, because I know this was back in April that he presented this to us, just so that you can see this again. And so this is the 4-unit building plan, and this is what he's proposed to us. Thank you, Michelle. Now going on to, this is the 6-unit plan. So these are some of the questions we have for Scott. First of all, what is the plant material that's going to be used in the beds as we enter our buildings and into our garages, as we haven't seen that yet, so we're quite interested in that. What is the plan for the entrances into the parking areas? Because there are some hedges and there are some trees planted there. Some of them are, in my opinion, have been pretty much wiped out. So we'd like to know, what he's taking down. I'm not there to see it, so it's difficult on my end. In his plan, he has sea grapes and he has sea grape hedges right next to each other, so there's not a lot of differentiation between the leaf structures, and we are going to propose to him that he gives us another idea on that. So it's just so that you can see the difference. It'll look better. Those Mulhy grasses, the pink ones that were in the photograph, and the low hedges, because we haven't gotten the design plan back. There you go. Thank you, Michelle. We're not sure if they're in front of the swales to hide some of the riprap, or if they are behind the swales. Okay, and then there is restoration on some of the trees on the property right now. And I'm hoping that maybe we can see what is going on with those in front of each building. That would be great if we could have some idea. So as far as the recommendations, we want to make sure that there's a landscape maintenance contractor that is really going to make sure that they take really good care of our plantings, that there's a schedule for pruning, and that we also have access to it, along with Michelle having the schedule, because I don't know who's been doing the pruning and of the trees especially, but they got pretty lanky and they weren't looking so good. That we have to have in our plans, make sure that we reduce our water consumption, which is an expense related item in our budget. And the design idea is to just to set off the palms, is to incorporate some river rock around them, just to give them a little designation. And I've heard from a number of people that, and I think it was John Montine that told me, this has come up before, to have some benches along the walkway so people could gather and sit, and people who are walking their dogs, maybe they're tired, maybe it's hot, and make sure that we have some benches. One area is between 259 and 261, we could put a bench. Okay, so now we're down to Scott Wyndham's plan includes a very soft color palette to nicely blend in with our buildings. And we're suggesting that we continue that look alongside of our walkways. If we can plant perennials instead of annuals, there would be a cost factor with that. They, as far as pulling them out in the after we leave in the season. So it'd be great if maybe with that color was there all year as a perennial. We could do something like the Bandito lantanas going up on either side of the walkways, African iris after that, and then some nice bright canna lilies right in front of the lobbies. Thank you. And if the lantanas don't work out, we could use dwarf pentas besides the walkway in 3 different colors, which is basically what the annuals were. They were 3 different colored annuals leading up. Well, they actually never went all the way up to the walkway or up to the lobbies. What we're hoping is that they don't stop midway, that they continue all the way up so that your eyesight goes, you know, from the street all the way up to the lobby. And it's more welcoming to have plants all the way up and just have them stop. So this is a biggie. In front of building 260, Club 2, that's Club 2 property. We went to the Naples Botanical Garden, and they have a beautiful Florida native garden there. And we were there, there were just so many butterflies and so many bees and birds landing. And we'd like to find out whether or not we could replicate not a large garden, but something of a scale to that property to plant natives in there and possibly have a bench and not distract from building 260, no large trees to block their view. And, you know, one selling point, even for owners who want to sell their property and it have it Audubon certified. I think there is a possibilities we can get volunteers from the botanical garden to help us plant and come up with plant ideas. Not sure about the design part of it yet. So we are totally endorsed Scott Wyndham's proposal. We thought he did a great job. He captured some comments we had given him before. And this will be a totally new look for Barefoot Beach. And I wanted to thank the landscape committee, which is the Jan Fisher, Claudine Hartland, Barbie Lancia, Barbara O'Shea, Dottie Russo, Bianca Terranova, and Dick Grabby, and also for having the COA allow us to do this. Include us. That was really wonderful. So Audrey Hepburn, her saying is to plant a garden is to dream of tomorrow. And I think that that is a good thing for Barefoot right now. And that is my presentation. And if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to email me. I have gotten very positive feedback on the native garden and the plantings at this point.
I like it.
So I can take questions now. Some of them I may not be able to answer, and I'll pass those off to the COA.
Barbara, this is Terry. Your presentation basically focuses, as did Scott's, on the fronts of the buildings. But obviously we have behind the buildings where a lot of the hedges were destroyed and all that. Is that part of what you're recommending that he add to the scope?
Well, the hedges are on his plan already.
In the back of the building?
Yep, they're on his plan, and that riprap was getting moved back there to just add some stability to that ground back there. Yeah, the hedges are behind the building on the mangrove side, and also on the sorry, the beach side.
Good.
They're on his plan. Any other questions or?
This is Kathy Walker.
Hi, Kathy Walker.
I have a lot of perennials. My experience in Kentucky is that they have maybe a 3-week season of bright color and flowers, but then what you have is a lot of plantings with no flowers. So how are you going to plant things that will sort of each come in season throughout the season, bloom throughout the season, or you probably need to realize that it won't be that colorful the whole time?
Well, the plants that we've looked at are the ones that will go for most of the season, and you are correct in that some of them, these would be our in-season times that were there, they would be colorful, yes. But there are times that, yes, they go through a regrowth period. Some of those perennials do need to get cut back so they don't become too large. That is true.
All right, well, they annuals, no, everyone wants perennials, but in annuals where you can clear off everything and replant are less messy sometimes to care for.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. Thank you, Patricia.
Barbara, we have a question. What about the landscape plans for the elevator areas of each building?
Dan, are you going to Geneseo today?
Excuse me, hold on for 1 second, Maggie. We're answering a mute.
Just later.
Question.
Just later.
Sally Stebbins, what about
if you came in with me, there's a small project
Maggie.
we could do it on us, or if you could drove in separately this afternoon.
Yes, Maggie, could you just give us a second because we're reading a question. What about the landscape plans for the elevator areas for each building? Do you have information on that, Barbara?
Are you talking about lobbies?
Sally?
I think she is.
Yeah.
Yes, lobbies.
We're not addressing lobbies today. Is this in Club 2? Is that what you're talking about?
For building 4, particularly.
Okay, we're not addressing those issues today. This is just the landscape committee. The lobbies belong to each club.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And then Dave and Gloria say, thank you, Landscape Task Force, for all your work. I really like the native garden idea.
Thank you.
Maggie, do you have a question? Maggie, do you have a question?
No, I don't. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Kerrigan, do you have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay. Joanne says, what will be done? Give me 1 second. Joanne will be done. What will be done in front of 263 and 265 beachside?
Well, I think behind 263, that will depend upon what the pool area looks like. And I know that Scott Wyndham will be working on that with the pool committee. And 265, oh, the front, oh, sorry. Well, we can do, part of that plan on the other, that is on the mangrove side with the larger buildings leading up. So it would just be not as, those sidewalks are shorter, so we could come up with a plan to have those flowers in there. So it would be the same, you just don't have a large walkway, the length of it.
The next person who would like to speak?
This is Deb Holtis. I just have a question about the area between the clubhouse pool and building 261. That area has been pretty much decimated, the palm trees and all the other growth in there. Is there a plan anywhere to work on that area?
Well, we were not tasked with that. I'm assuming that's, I'm assuming, is this me?
No, it's her. Deb, you're chiming in on your iPhone and your iPad. You need to disconnect one. Deborah? Okay. Okay.
I don't know about that area, but that's the area where we'd like to put the bench. That I'm assuming is something that Scott Wyndham will take care of.
It's currently on his plans, by the way.
Yeah.
And some of that area is part of the dunes also, so.
Right.
That'll come out of those discussions.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Barbara?
I want to thank her very much for the time and effort she put into this. I'm sure I appreciate it. I think she's done a great job.
Well, thank you. And I've learned a lot. It's
Tom
been a
Frisbee
very,
has-
it's been a fun project.
Excuse me, Mr. Frisbee?
Hi, Barbara. Nice presentation. Thank you. That was very well done and some great ideas. Originally, we had talked about material alteration statute that comes into play not only for the landscaping, but also for the buildings that get into tiles and fountains and all of that. Are we properly documenting where we get into these changes as to why we're doing them? And whether or not, I think we need a legal opinion actually, but just to cover our bases on all of that. Any material alteration requires a vote of 2/3 of the owners, and I don't think we want to go through that. But we do need to be cautious because the statutes and legal rulings get pretty specific. And I know these are unusual circumstances, but it would, I think, help to have proper documentation in place.
Can I make a comment on the material alterations? Because plants are transitory and not structural, I don't think that material alteration statute applies. I don't think there's any problem.
There's a dramatic change in the layouts and the types of plants
No.
being used, and
Well, the plants we've been told, we have many of our plants are now illegal. They have to be taken out. There are plants you're not allowed.
those are the justifications I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I just think it would be helpful to have something in writing, in file, in order to give us protection in case of future issues.
And the COA can, once you get the plans, COA board members, I think I agree with Tom, you can just adopt the plan.
The board has no authority over that. It's really an owner call based on the statutes again.
I don't think so. You just said cover your base, so to
Okay,
cover your base.
Okay, so if anybody else has any questions for Barbara? Anybody else have any questions for Barbara? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on. We do have a couple of other topics for you. So I'm gonna go, give me just a second. I'm gonna share the screen again.
And while she's doing that, I'll make a quick comment. One of the things I want to mention is we have new parking rules during the hurricane. They were sent out to you for people to review. I just want to remind everybody to look at them. We'll be discussing them and adopting them hopefully at the next board meeting, which is next week. I just want to point out to you that they've been sent to you. I hope you've all reviewed them. But basically, you're not going to be allowed to park under the garages or in the parking lots during a hurricane or the few days before the hurricane. Are you ready? Are you ready, Michelle?
Yeah, you have to give me just a second.
If we're still waiting, then the other comment I had, I was going to say later, but I'll use it to fill the space here, is we are currently in negotiations with our accounting vendor to get made good on the losses for the accounting issue. And part of that will be a non-disclosure agreement, but we think at this time will be made whole and no owners will be suffering any financial loss because of that. That's my only comment on that, but I want to at least make that.
I believe we are ready we're going to be discussing the pools at this time. Mr. Blackburn, I believe that you were going to start this conversation. Scott Blackburn?
Yep, yes. Yeah. You ready for me to start?
Go right ahead.
Okay. And this is kind of a two-part presentation, and John Montaigne will help me as well here. But what I wanted to start with is generally the plan looking forward, which we've not communicated in any great detail up to this point in time. But as mentioned earlier, I understand there's a permit that we're waiting for, and that permit is really for demolition. But even while we're waiting for that, we can, I think, refine a plan of how we're going to proceed from here. I guess first up, what we need to do, knowing that we cannot, we're not going to reuse the existing pool, it's a question of designing and building. Excuse me?
Why not?
Okay, we're gonna take questions after. Please mute yourself. We will take questions after the presentation, so please everyone mute themselves except for Mr. Blackburn. Thank you.
I might, Michelle, answer that question now because I think it's germane to the rest of what I'm going to say. I mean, we've had an assessment by a pool engineer who we believe is highly credible and assessed the pool that we have. And given its age and current condition, the pool is believed to be in its last legs. And to put a great deal of money into fixing that pool up does not make good sense in the long run. And that was that person's opinion, which we've relied on. And so we're considering that as a done decision, if you will. So that's where we are in that. We feel like we really have no chance from a sensible business position to attempt to try to rebuild that pool. Okay, having said that, we need to now come up with a design for a new pool. And the idea here now is that we will try to come up with at least probably 3 different pool layouts. One that would represent basically in the same sort of size and function of the pre-hurricane pool, design a baseline pool or a pool that we could put a budgetary number against as sort of a starting point pool. There are other features that we might want to add to that. So the concept is that in addition to that baseline minimized type pool, most like what we have, we would have a couple of other alternatives to choose from as well. So maybe as many as 3 pool layouts. And we need to come up and evolve concept designs in enough detail for those 3 pools so that we could actually put some budgetary numbers to them and get an idea of how much they're actually going to cost. I think the cost to do even the baseline pool will surprise people because it can't be built the way it was in the past. There are a lot more restrictive codes and construction requirements today. But that would be but that's the baseline, and we need to confirm that. And then from that baseline, we can see an incremental cost comparison to any enhancements that the group might want to consider. So once those 3 concepts are developed, the idea would be then to price those, at least have a budgetary estimate so we can differentiate between them, and then conduct a meeting, an open town meeting type meeting that we can present the concepts and the estimates and ask people, give people opportunity to comment and ask questions to give us feedback as to how we want to go forward, ultimately to select one of these options to go forward, which likely would have to occur through some board meeting or voting process. Others would have to speak to the actual process there, but certainly we want the body of people to buy into what we want, what option we select. And then lastly, once you've done that, we can then select someone to actually go out and do the design work, the detailed design work to design the pool. And it likely would be in the hands of a general contractor who's also a builder, and they would do both the design and the build of the pool, would be what we're thinking at the moment. So that's kind of the general approach right now and why we're doing it. And from here, John Montaigne is going to take this notion of concepts a little bit further so you get a little bit of an idea of what we're thinking at the moment.
This first slide, everyone, is an aerial view of what things looked like before Hurricane Ian. There's 2 things I want to point out here. Number one is the red lines that kind of encircle a space that is behind 263, but also occupies some space between 263 and 265. And that area is where the COA has property ownership rights. So one of the things that came up in previous meetings was that there was a lot of pushback from Club 3 with respect to encroaching on their views and property. So I just want to identify in this slide, and this isn't our drawings, this is from the county. This is where the ownership lines are for club. Well, you can see 263 is kind of outside of that those red lines, and 265 is as well. The second thing I want to point out on this is that the pool behind 263, as it was before the hurricane, actually does extend slightly outside of the COA property boundary. So in order to do anything, we will need to rectify that on a going forward. So again, permitting and all that kind of stuff is going to require us to move that pool slightly, not actually physically move it, but when it's reconstructed, for it to be built within COA property lines. So that's kind of the baseline that Scott was talking about, is how do we get a price for an estimate essentially for a pool similar to what's there, but inside COA property. The next slide would be kind of a first option. And we thought the easiest way to figure out what that might be is to just rebuild the pool that is at 259 and just put it behind 263. The good news to that is we have a lot of drawings, or we'll have shortly, and so it'll be a relatively easy task for someone to estimate what that cost would be. As you can see, it doesn't occupy much more space than the 263 pool does now, or did before Hurricane Ian.
Like the 263 pool.
But it does enhance the functionality, usability, et cetera, to what was there before. The third option, Michelle, if you'd advance.
Yeah, I need to just mute somebody. There you go. All right. There you go.
The third option is kind of a much grander plan. It retains many of the same aspects of the first two, which is that it again is within COA property. This essentially is kind of a modified diagram of what the pool at Bonita Bay looks like. What it does is that the lap pool, and again, these are just things to get estimates on. Doesn't mean we would build any version of this, but it would give us an understanding of what the various costs could be. I think Scott made a good point earlier when he said that even rebuilding the pool behind 263 is going to be more expensive than maybe we would like, because of the additional requirements that code now places on it. So the question will be, is there interest in spending incremental money above which would have to be spent anyway, just to put a likely similarly sized pool as before? So I think we have taken into account what people were concerned about with respect to staying within COA property. I think that although this third option does encroach a little bit more on 265 views, it does largely maintain a straight out sight line from those northeasterly units, and obviously nicely manicured or nicely landscaped I think would be interesting to consider. That's all I got.
Give me 1 second. We'll go to questions. Give me one moment.
I'd like to make a couple quick comments. Michelle, may I please speak for a minute?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm just going to set this up so we can see you. There you go.
Okay, just two quick comments here. The first one is we had a question about whether or not we should replace the pool. I want to add two quick comments to that. In deciding who to listen to, we had to find a licensed professional engineer who's insured. Lots of people have opinions, but the people who are actually licensed and insured for it are a smaller subset, and that's where we got our data. You know, when you have to pick who to listen to, that's the one you want to listen to. And deciding whether or not you want to gamble on whether or not how long the older pool would last, the one without piles under it. We opted to leave the wires in place for those 6 transformers because we didn't see any damage. We didn't think we had to replace them. And now we're truly regretting that, just so you know. We wish they would have all been done. There's nobody down here. So you would have had power for would have been generated for another couple of weeks. We really wish we would have done it then. And so I think taking the gamble and having to replace it in a couple of years for basically the full cost of turning an old one out and putting a new one in because it's failed is a really high risk decision that I'm uncomfortable with even considering to make. The other thing I was going to mention is I believe this is a true statement. Every pool north of us from here to the park, I believe is being raised and being replaced because they all suffered basically the same damage we did. And I think that we're not being unique here. I think that is really the only reasonable choice. So anyway.
I have a question and a comment. I think this is a fantastic presentation. I think gives some options and all that. I guess Scott Blackburn and John, do you have any kind of time estimate? You've got a great plan, but do you have any idea how we get started and what the time frame might be to come to a conclusion?
Well, the first step, Terry, is that we now need to find someone who's willing to give us some estimates so that we can make an informed decision. And we've been working with at least 2 entities to help us do that. This isn't a formal bid process, but is trying to approach a couple of our friends, so to speak, who've been doing some business with us along the way and see if they could give us enough information that would allow us to, at least from a financial perspective, decide what people are interested in pursuing.
Thanks.
Question. Have you talked to any engineers that understand building restrictions based on how close we are to the berms, to the dunes, etc.?
There is a there is a drawing floating around.
Let me finish. Let me finish, please. I'm just suggesting that should be checked before we spend a lot of money coming up with alternatives that then we find out later can't be built, okay? That's all.
Okay, so Dick, if you go back to any one of those drawings that was on the presentation, there is a red line kind of out in the middle of nowhere there that runs parallel to the beach. That area there, that line there is roughly equivalent to the construction setback line. So we've seen some drawings from other sources. I didn't think it was necessary to include here, but that outline of red property space there is within the area that is in a
Let me see what it.
nominally a buildable area.
Sorry, excuse me, Bud's iPhone, could you please mute yourself?
That's
Bud's iPhone, please mute yourself.
The other comment I would add is that in the experience that I've had recently with the 259 pool, talking to many pool suppliers, I was actually impressed with what appeared to be their knowledge of all the rules, specifically those close to shorelines. I think to find a reputable guy won't be hard to do, that understands all the regulations. Might be hard to get them to show up to work, but to find people, I don't think it's going to be that difficult.
Scott, can I ask a question?
Yes, you can ask a question. Go right ahead. With
Okay,
Bill's
this is-
iPad, please.
This is Bill Turner. This is a great presentation. However, I thought 30 days ago during our last meeting, Scott Strickland said that the 263 pool would not be moved. It wouldn't be anywhere different than it is now. And everyone agreed to that. Since that time, or before that time, the people in building 8, just for the record here, got together in April and decided that we don't want it anywhere closer to that building. So I'm speaking for just about 36 people here of who said that. And now it seems like today, looking at your map, like this is COA territory, et cetera, that this is a little change from what it was at our last meeting. Am I
Let me
right or am I
respond.
wrong?
I'm sorry if you misunderstood me. What I said last time, or what I tried to say was, we would not be putting it on Club 2 or Club 3's property. We would not be moving it to those properties. We would not be putting it on those properties. We'd be putting it on COA property. That still stands. We plan to leave it in COA property. At the time, we didn't know it was 6 or 8 feet or whatever that number of feet is into Club 2's property. But we're not going to build it on Club 2's property. It's going to be built only on the COA property. That's what I was trying to say before, and we haven't changed that position. We are not going to infringe upon Club 2 or Club 3 or require them to do anything special to get an easement. If it can't be done on the COA property, it won't be done. So that's what I was saying. And I think we're staying.
Well, just for the record, so you know what we say in Building 8. That's our thoughts.
And by the way, just so everybody understands, before this goes very far, once we actually figure out what it is and roughly what it'll cost, we'll have to get a vote and see if we get 66% of the 348 owners to agree with what we're doing with the pool.
Got it. Thank you.
That is a material change.
But no matter what, I'd like to move it to COA only property so we don't have to worry about easements with other clubs and any of that stuff. It just should be on the COA issue. The COA should take care of it.
There's a question from Deborah. Deborah, are you considering any walls on the beach side? Can you
sorry.
be more specific?
Call me back. I'm on a Zoom now.
Bill's iPad, please mute yourself. Bill's iPad, please mute yourself. Bill Turner, please mute yourself.
I will. No, I have
Thank
one
you.
more question. I have another question, not
But
on
I
the
think he
pool.
was, John's addressing something else at the moment. Could you just give him a moment to finish and then you can go?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Deborah,
John?
on iPhone 4, are you considering any walls on the beach side? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. You mean like retaining walls, or do you mean like blocking walls, or could you be more specific?
If you're asking about putting block walls at the edge of the parking lot, the answer is no. I can't imagine how we'd ever get that through the permitting process, which we currently have been dealing with. So we're not considering putting any new concrete block walls in anywhere different than we had.
No, I'm talking about, Scott, I'm talking about like at Kalia, they have like some plexi, I think there may be 4 feet high walls around the beach side and some 4 foot or 3 foot decorative. I can send you some pictures that they have at the Mercata. I mean, I know it wouldn't help in a big hurricane, but maybe in a smaller situation.
At this particular point, I am sure putting 4-foot walls in our parking lot would be an incredible, difficult process with the permitting process with the county right now.
No, on the beach side, not on the parking
I'm
lot.
talking about on the beach side.
Oh, okay, got it. So even if it's on the beach side of the pool. Okay.
You know, we're having huge problems about where we're putting the outlets for power right now. I mean, just
Answered, thank you.
sorry. I wish I could give you better news, but our permitting process is pretty painful at this time.
Bill Turner, then back to you.
Bill Turner, back to you.
No, my next question is not about the pool, so I'll let this finish. Then I would like to ask Scott Strickland another question
Okay.
about a different subject.
Okay, Bud's iPhone, please mute yourself. Bud's iPhone, please mute yourself. Yeah. Angie, yes, we can mute everybody, but I have to go in and mute all over 100 people and then go in and just unmute people who are allowed to speak. So it's a long process. That's why I keep asking people to please mute their phones. So Bud's iPhone, please, could you mute your phone?
I'm afraid Bud might have set the phone down and walked away. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Can you ask the question now? I'll listen carefully.
There you go.
Bill Turner?
Oh, are you ready for a non-pool
Yes.
question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. At the beginning, Scott, you were talking about the, the buildings of the buildings, and you mentioned a number of numbers, and you said that building one is, or club one is pretty well set up, and you said some things about 262, and when it got to club 3, you didn't say anything. Does that mean that there's nothing happening there, or we're at the end of the line, or could you just be a little more specific
Sure.
about that, specifically building 8?
Right, okay, a couple things. First of all, I want to give a disclaimer always. The COA and me personally are not really involved with that project. I'm just reporting the status from other people, just so you know.
Okay.
And I'm actually technically not even really there on the committee. I'm there at the request of one of the owners of your club to offer my well thought out insight that I take at least 10 seconds to think about before I speak. Well, at least 5.
Okay, okay.
But the status is club 1 is farther right now than the other clubs are, but they are working on most of the buildings now are fairly far along. I have a trouble remembering exactly what each building is, but I seem to remember there's a lot of walls up and going up in club 3 at this time. I don't remember the meeting was a week ago. I don't remember exactly what was said there, but I think most of the walls are up for most of the buildings. And the ones that aren't up are because we're waiting for something like a pipe has to be done or something. So I believe most of the block work is done, and what's not done, we've been waiting on things unrelated to us, but like, fire pipe, standpipe has to go through it or whatever. The stuck one, I believe.
Dick is on site and has a up-to-date report.
Scott, you're right on buildings 8 and 10. There is no block work done on building 12.
Right.
Well, we just don't like the people in building 12, I guess. But yeah, so we're working on it, and they're going to, club 1's got some stuff done now, and then we're going to switch and start at the north end and work south, and we're going to have to rotate it to make everybody happy. We aren't going to favor any one club over the others, obviously, because there's 3 clubs involved with that process, and they just, kind of work it out between them. Nobody's forgetting club 3. Everybody's going to get serviced until you get lights and the screens in your storage units. It doesn't really make any difference what order things are being done because you can't use your storage unit until those things are done. And quite frankly,
I believe building 10 is completed with their walls, and they started today on building 8.
Thank you.
That's correct.
And actually building 10 they've started stuccoing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. The block really goes quickly when they're here working. That's the key, when they're here working.
Well, that was my question. When does that happen? But I'm sure you don't know that.
I can assure you the contractor doesn't know, because the sub doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's in process, I will tell you, Bill. And by the way, you've got, I think, all your new garage lights. How's that?
Wow.
And 10 and 12 doesn't.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
We still believe all the occupancy, all of the buildings that have, all the 12 buildings at the clubhouse will all be done well before season. Maybe some paint or something will be missing or some kind of little trim stuff. You should all be able to use your storage units. You should all have doors. All that stuff should be in there.
No, I was thinking about the walls. I was thinking about the wall in the lobby where the mailboxes are and things like that. So that hasn't been done yet, right?
Right. I don't even know if your club has ordered the mailboxes yet. You'd have to ask.
They have. They have.
Okay.
They have them in the warehouse.
Right.
I was told.
Do we have any other questions for the town hall meeting?
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Can you hear me? I can't tell. This is Pat Kerrigan.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excuse me for not jumping in, but we've been working all the clubs. I'm talking about clubs 1, 2, and 3, working with the construction company. And we're working together. And right now it might look to you like I'm with Club 3. I'm on the board of Club 3, and we are working with the rest of the clubs. The 10 got done early because there's like, as Scott said, there's extenuating circumstances. Said this one gets done first. We're going to get them all done about the same time. We're working together. We're cooperating, and I know Bill's concerned when you look it out. One club seems to be further along. We're going to get them done together, and I think we're all cooperating. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, do we have any other questions regarding the pool, landscaping? No?
Has anything been said today about the pool 259?
No,
Yeah, well,
we have not said anything about 259, only 263.
well, we said that they are waiting
For the
still on
drawings.
drawings.
Yeah.
Right, she's 3/4 of the way done.
Les Mitchell, if you just email me at gm@barefootbeachclub.net, we'll be happy to provide you a copy of that. Hillary, the office hours, we are not open on July 4th. We'll be here on July 3rd, but we will not be here on July 4th. Any more questions? Perfect. Thank you all for your time.